So let's head over to Mauritania. The Dioling National Park is an amazing paradise for birds. Nowhere else on the West African sub-region can you find so many species in such a small area. But the region is highly vulnerable to climate change. The local authorities, with the support of Germany's development agency, are trying to secure biodiversity in the park and boost its role as a driver of local sustainable development. Our reporter went there to find out more.
Year for year, the sea level here has been rising, as locals can see with their own eyes. A growing number of them are having to leave their homes along the beach. The older generation still remembers what it used to look like here.
Half the village used to be here. There were even houses on this very spot before it was all flooded. There are probably remains of houses on the seabed over there.
Zen El Abidine works in the nearby Dioling National Park. He confirms the gravity of the situation.
I spoke to an old man who told me that in the 1980s, the ocean was 2 kilometers further back. Now look at the damage that the sea has done.
Living from farming alone is increasingly difficult. Land is in short supply due to the ground becoming oversalted. With their livelihoods destroyed, people are having to move inland. But the Dioling National Park, 12 kilometers away, provides alternative sources of income. A few years ago, it was home to far fewer animals. Today, it's a breeding ground for over 300 species of birds, including flamingos. There's both freshwater and saltwater in the Senegal River Delta. Nature conservation makes sense here. Protecting the ecosystem also creates jobs. Fishermen sell their fish across the country and even in neighboring Senegal.
In the past, people lived here from farming too. But really, fishing makes most sense. We can make a living from fishing all year round. We benefit from the loch and the basin. There are lots of fish here.
The abundance of fish is a recent development. 30 years ago, the region was left ravaged by this dam, built in the 1980s to supply Mauritania, Senegal, Gambia, and Mali with fresh water. It devastated the natural environment.
The construction of the dam completely destabilized the ecosystem. It was destroyed. The natural balance was destroyed, the balance between salt water and fresh water. And that wasn't all. The fresh water was blocked and couldn't reach the national park.
Years later, the problem was addressed with the construction of these locks, built with the help of the German KfW Development Bank and the German Development Agency, GIZ. The park authority has demarcated fishing zones and makes sure the fishermen respect spawning seasons. The fresh water in the basin has helped revive the local fauna too. Lotuses have begun thriving again. Local women spend 2 to 3 hours a day in the water collecting seeds from the lotus stalks. Then they sort them, shell and dry them, and over a period of several weeks, turn them into couscous.
After the dam was built until last year, we couldn't harvest anything. But now nature has started to recover. The lotuses have returned and we can collect their seeds again.
They harvested some 600 kilos last year, enough to feed their families for months and sell the excess. Another successful venture made possible by the park. Back in the Delta, biologist Zen El Abidine is out on the water almost every day, taking a look at the nesting sites. The Dioling National Park is home to the greatest concentration of birds in West Africa. And in addition to rescuing animal habitats in the region, the conservation zone has also helped to secure human livelihoods.
Germany is committed to switching to renewable energy and using energy more efficiently. Right now in Germany, more than a third goes onto buildings. So it is good news for the climate that more and more new constructions there adopt what's known as passive housing standards.
That's right, NT. That means using very little energy for heating. And as long as fossil fuel is the source, causing far less CO2 emissions. It's not just private homes that are being built to these new standards. Public buildings are as well, including a heated swimming pool. And the visitors enjoy it.
This looks like a typical indoor swimming pool, but it uses 60% less energy. It was the first one built in Europe according to the energy-efficient building standard known as Passive House. Bamberg's public utility company has run the Bambados complex for 7 years. City residents supported the project.
Back then, when we were deciding whether to renovate the old pool, which was fairly small, or build a new one, we chose to look to the future. We decided to build a new swimming pool according to the highest standards, both in terms of customer service and ecological guidelines.
A unique insulation envelops the building. All the water slides were put indoors. Less water evaporates thanks to the pool's design. That means the ventilation system doesn't have to work so hard. All these features save money and energy for the community pool, even if initial costs were high.
The passive house features accounted for €5.5 million out of an overall budget of 35 million. But we're certain that those costs will be recouped fairly quickly, since our energy costs have dropped significantly.
Some additional heating is required to keep the temperature cozy inside the facility. But here too a sustainable solution was found, a combined heat and power or CHP plant. Small wood chips are burned in a specially designed system. It's efficient and uses less resources, says the technician in charge.
We don't burn the wood just to generate heat. The CHP plant provides heat and electricity. The level of efficiency is significantly better than that of a conventional heating system.
That's why the company has also planted poplar trees in a water conservation area the size of 50 football fields.
We're growing poplar trees here without using harmful fertilizers or pesticides. So we're protecting the water and providing an energy supply for the Bambados swimming pool complex.
Modifications or additions are a problem, however. Any changes require the insulating layer to be broken apart and completely redone. Architect Jan Bartels and his company have been building passive house homes on the outskirts of Berlin for some time. It's still a niche market.
Until construction practices change, it's not possible to build a passive house for everyone. They simply cost more initially, even if they do pay off over time. But for now, manpower and material costs prohibit a boom in the sector.
He means materials like styrofoam, which is an excellent flame retardant. Unfortunately, not enough is available to cover the growing demand. For individual homeowners like Karsten Davidite, that's not an issue. Today, he's choosing a paint.
I choose the most environmentally friendly option if I can. For me, there's a synergy between environmental protection and technology.
Just like the public pool in Bamberg, Karsten Davidite's passive house can save energy in many ways. He doesn't need additional heating. And a solar power system supplies power for his house and his electric cars.
Good ideas can work everywhere. And that certainly holds for our next story. It's about a German-Ugandan joint project. They have developed a method to turn maize spindles into briquettes, a great way to make use of biomass waste. They want to see people in Uganda use less firewood and more of these natural briquettes for cooking and heating. Our eco-reporter went out to investigate.
Ndejje University in central Uganda provides meals to 1,800 students every day and uses huge amounts of cooking wood in the process. The university is looking to change that with the help of the German engineer Albert Schmidt, who's working with the Energy Research Center to replace wood with more sustainable briquettes made from corn waste. The first new stove is already in operation.
It was a former firewood stove, and we adapted it to the briquettes. We are already planning to adapt another stove for briquettes, 2 briquettes, and one by one will be replaced, I think.
The university hopes to radically reduce its wood consumption. Uganda has a huge problem with deforestation. Every year, 90,000 hectares of forest are lost in the country. Much of the wood is used to cook food. The university gets the materials for its briquettes from local farmers who grow corn, also known as maize.
We take the maize only, the cobs we just throw in the garden, or we just leave it there to rot. It is good that when these people came, they are at least giving us some money and take the cobs.
Albert Schmidt has persuaded the farmers to collect the cobs rather than throwing them away. For 3 large sacks, each farmer receives the equivalent of $1. It's a welcome source of extra income for the small-scale farmers who often struggle financially. The cobs are dried at a small factory, then placed in a carbonizer for 2 days. It turns them into charcoal. They are then mixed with water and molded into briquettes. These are left to dry in the sun for another 5 days. Then they're ready for use. The factory produces a ton of briquettes each week. That's nowhere near enough.
We cannot produce much more. And we calculated to replace all the firewood of our university kitchen and this school we provide with briquettes, we need around 4 tons per week. So we have to build another bigger carbonizer.
Since starting to produce briquettes, the university has massively cut back on firewood use. That's not only helping to preserve the forest, it's also saving the institution money. And the idea is catching on. A nearby school has now also introduced a new technology. Albert Schmidt is hoping the project will set a precedent nationwide and help stop the rapid disappearance of Uganda's forest.
Yes, indeed, it's high time to stop deforestation and to offer alternative ways to make a living, and not just in Africa. That's all for today on Eco at Africa, a co-production of Channels TV, DW, Kweze TV, South Africa. It's bye-bye from me in Lagos, Nigeria.
I hope you've enjoyed the show. For more stories on the environment, visit our website. You can also write and tell us about interesting environmental projects going on where you are. I'm Felicia Endersby in Johannesburg. Thanks for being with us and see you next week.